On the Africa room, no seed biting, never bites. Fast water dribbling in the girls down with the guys. Final seat bite, you right fine. OMG, Max Ford, Robert C. Gallon Neck Night. Hot stove talk, Robert C. Bringing the hype. EC's alive, plus trust under those in my city life. White. Queens got the dreams united. On the rag, trump out, bring me stack. Night and under that chocolate flag. Smack that hole out the park. Fuck a deafening black. Side game time, Robin CP time to ignite. Under NYC skies, we fight the good fight. Remains cheer in the orange, we unite. Mets forever. I'm fit to be in sight. Mets riding high. Energy like a live wire. Queen City chance. Passion never tires. Grand slam dreams and paces focus fast. Holding it steady, cause we know we gonna last. We the kings of the field, time to ignite. Under NYC skies, we fight the good fight. Remain cheer in the orange, we unite. Mets forever. I'm 50 in sight. All hearts ignite like NYC stars. Robin CP, guiding even through scars. Queens got the glow, city anthem flows.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to episode 26 of the Mets Hot Stove. Hopefully everybody's enjoying their Wednesday, as we do have a lot to talk about in regards to so many different players that we are not getting, players we might or might not get, but we do got a lot to talk about tonight, and a very special giveaway that we were supposed to do a while back, but because whatever reason, we finally figured it out now, and we're going to pick the winner of the Juan Soto shirt that we did when the Mets signed Juan Soto. That everybody who said LGM in the chat that day was eligible to be in the giveaway, and we do have that ready to go tonight, and we'll do that at the end of the show so we can pick the winner in a special wheel that we put together, and then we're going to reveal the winner, and then we're gonna, get your information, hopefully, if you're watching this. So that would be nice. Some people might not have been back since, who knows, but we do have a winner, and we'll give that person, I would say, 72 hours, Chris, to get back to us, or a little bit into that, because we don't have their information. They would have our information. What do you think about that?
Yeah, give them some time, maybe comment and tag them in the comment section after the video and see if they respond, and if not, then on to the next person.
Yep, absolutely. All right, guys. So we're going to have to start with the obvious situation that's going on right now. And it is a lot but with Alonso and everything like that. But before we get started, we know that as soon as the Roki Sasaki situation basically finally came to a conclusion that the Mets weren't going to get him, the Mets had a ton of money to spend in the IAF area, and they signed Elian Pena, one of the best international free agents on the market. And we gave him $5 million, and that's basically the bulk of our IAF money. And we signed, I think it was up to 17 international free agents. Probably more than that. It'd probably be up to 20 at some point. But the Mets did get their prize international free agent, 17 years old, Elian Pena. And Chris, just quick words about that. He's 17 years old. We don't know what he's going to be, but his all his attributes, all the things that you want to see in an international free agent, when you're one of the best in international market, you kind of like, oh, okay, cool. We'll see how it goes 3, 4, 5 years from now. But what are your thoughts on that right now?
Yeah, I haven't really got a chance to watch too much tape. I did watch a little batting practice session that he had. There's kind of like an angle that faces directly towards him, so you get kind of like a side view of his swing. Left-handed bat, which is awesome. I always like to see a young up-and-coming prospect being a lefty. We know that he's a shortstop. He has a sweet, compact swing. It's not too long. It looks very compact. So I'm curious how the power is going to translate, and if they decide to lengthen his swing a little bit, which would make sense. But again, the most talking points that I see, because clearly people were worked up about Roki Sasaki. People got their hopes up in this fan base. And clearly, if there was a Roki Sasaki option for the New York Mets, we know that he has top teams named already, being the Blue Jays, Padres, and the Dodgers. A lot of Mets fans are holding out hope for Sasaki. And so it sort of seems like it's just gloomy, right? Now that we signed Elian Pena instead, who's only 17 years old, and we won't see him in the major leagues for quite some time. And I understand it, but at the end of the day, he's a young, exciting prospect. And the other thing that I see regarding Elian Pena is that he's a shortstop, and the Mets already have too many shortstops in this farm system. But the great thing about it is that him being 17 years old, so young, coming into this farm system, the Mets can mold him to any sort of position that they really want him to go to, right? And he has that capability of doing that. He's athletic from what I hear in the scouting report. So again, I just don't like when fans get bogged down by the fact that he is another shortstop in this class. Francisco Lindor is going to be here for the foreseeable future. Let's just take a look at what he possesses as a ball player, not specifically where he is positionally, because the Mets and Pena have all the time in the world to figure that out. So again, with unfortunate news that Roki Sasaki said no to the New York Mets, right? I think waking up today to making this official signing happen is such a win. So I'm excited. David Stearns, in the little snippet of an interview that he gave talking about Pena, was smiling from ear to ear. So he's obviously excited. And again, it's tough. I know Mets fans, and just baseball fans in general, with the way that the farm system works, we don't have much patience. We want to just see immediate prospect results translate to the major league diamond. Unfortunately, that's not the way that it works. And we'll see Elian Pena when he's ready. But this is a good start. Historic deal too, by the way, $5 million. The Mets only had $6.2 million allotted in the IFA class to give out at 25. Elian Pena takes home 5 of that $6.2 million. Historic deal, top paid Latin American ball player in this class, and I think it was tied for 5th highest of all time of any IFA deal. So I think Alvarez was at $2.5 million for comparison purposes. Giovanni Rodriguez was around there as well, and Alex Ramirez, when he signed way back when, was at 2 million, just over 2 million. So it really puts into perspective the magnitude of this signing. So good thing to wake up to. I'm excited.
Yeah, and the difference, in years past when the Wilpons on the team, they were never invested enough in the international market at all. And it was a big problem because they always had to try to get a free agent, try to trade guys, try to draft the right guys out of college. And the international market kind of, you can mold that player. Like you said, Chris, you can mold that player to what you want him to be. And when I know people went crazy on X, another shortstop. But again, shortstops are the most versatile. They're the most athletic on the team. They can just be molded to what they want. I'm not saying to put him behind the plate or put him at first base, but you know what? He could be the third baseman of the future. Could be the right fielder, second, center fielder, left fielder for that matter. We really don't know. But again, it's going to take 2 to 3 years at the very least. If he's one of those, skyrocketing type of prospects where he's going to be in the top 10 right away when he finally inks the deal officially, he's going to be in the top 10 in the Mets system. If he flies through the system, great. That benefits his team over the next 2 to 3 years. And, you hope he's a Juan Soto, or Manny Machado or somebody like that, that you would want that to happen. But again, it is what it is at that point. He is one of the top-rated international free agents. That's why you give him $5 million. And, they had their eye on him for a while. And then when the Roki Sasaki thing kind of popped up, the Mets had to hold off. And as soon as that was out of the question, now we know that we got Pena. So, and probably up to 20 at this point, international free agents. So that's a good news on the prospect front and the minor leagues and the international free agents front. But now we got to talk about the ever ongoing story and saga. I mean, this is like episode 3 of of this saga when it comes to Pete Alonso. And I'm getting to the point now, and we saw stories come out, and we'll talk about that in the next topic. But with the Pete Alonso situation, where it came out and Andy Martino reported it, that the Mets and Alonso are still far apart. And again, everybody starts speculating, and we're going to speculate right now, right? It's not the years. We all understand that. It's 3 years, which the Mets want. it has to be an astronomical amount of money, because we did find out within that article. I don't know if you saw that, Chris, but the Mets did offer the 3 for $90, and the first year was an opt out. After that, it wasn't. So that kind of tells me that when we get to our next topic, that the Mets are eyeing the possibility or the prospect of the possibility of getting Vladimir Guerrero or going after him next offseason. But to have them so far apart, according to Andy Martino, it has to be the money. Like, it has to be so much of a gap that the Mets like have to think Boris is on drugs, because it just doesn't make sense. Like, I don't think $5 to $6 million is per year is that much of a difference. I mean, he has to be asking for $40+ million. That's the only thing I can think of, Chris, that they can still be far apart, that they can't come to a middle ground of, say, $35 million. If the Mets are offering 30 and he's offering 40, and they can't come to that middle ground, they have to be asking for like 3 for like 130, 140, like astronomical AAV, because I don't think the Mets would have this leaked out so easily. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it is Boris that's leaking that out, but I don't feel like they would make this so much of an issue and prolong this if it wasn't the difference of a number that was so different and so far apart.
I was on mute, sorry. So basically, when that report first dropped, we talked about it. I talked about it on my channel. We talked about it. You know, it was sort of far gone conclusion for me that I was very confident that the Mets and Alonso figured out sooner rather than later. Because again, you hear Alonso offering the Mets an exclusive deal to them worth 3 years. 3 years. This is what the Mets want. This is exactly what they've been after for Pete Alonso this whole entire time. So why isn't this deal done yet? The money is definitely the issue. But you know what? I'm going to take a different perspective, because I don't even think Scott Boras is that naive to even ask for $35 to $40 million AAV for Pete Alonso. There's no chance. There's no chance, right? He could be asking for 33, 34 perhaps. And at that point, if the Mets are stuck on 30, that's a very easy way to find common ground. Yeah. But from what I'm assessing, if the Mets really are pursuing Vlad Jr. in this offseason or the next, it doesn't matter which one it is, via trade this offseason or via free agency next offseason, maybe the Mets did pull their offer from Pete Alonso or for Pete Alonso, like we talked about in the last stream. Or maybe they still have a 3-year offer on the table, but they reduced the AAV down to more of what he was supposed to always get, right? Even going back to last year in that contract offer worth 23 to 25 million. And Boris is coming in at 30, 31, 32. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. This is a very tricky situation, Rob. I thought it was going to be very easy with a very fine-tuned solution after that original report came out last week. But now Vlad Jr. and Martino dropping that bombshell, because I think this is the very first time this offseason we've heard officially that the Mets actually discussed with the Blue Jays what they would potentially want, or if they're going to let Vlad Jr. go in this offseason, right? We've been talking about it in terms of speculation, but this is the very first report from a credible reporter. And I'm using the term credible loosely here with Martino, because again, he does get a lot of stuff right. We know that he has a bias towards the Mets. That's very obvious. But like you said last stream, when it comes to stuff like this, I trust Martino, to be honest with you. There's no reason for him to lie about this sort of situation, to be honest with you. So this is what I'm thinking, is that maybe the Mets pulled any offer that they had short-term off the table, if they even had one at all on the table for Pete Alonso, right? Because again, 3 years, $90 million that we talked about weeks and weeks ago, I mean, I was still even struggling to find the verified source of where that was actually on the table. Yeah. I'm not sure which reporter actually reported that, but again, I think that there's a deeper meaning behind this. And I always thought that, and I always knew that, right? Because again, the Mets don't believe in Pete Alonso long term. They just simply don't. And that's always been obvious, or else the deal would have been done already.
Correct.
You know what the craziest thing of this all is? And listen, I understand the Mets are definitely negotiating in good faith, right? They're definitely negotiating in good faith. They are wary about investing in Pete Alonso because if you have a guy that you are setting your sights on in Vlad Jr. and you want him on your team, no matter the backstory of Pete Alonso and how long he's been in this organization, it's a baseball decision at the end of the day. From a president of baseball operations that really has no ties, no concrete ties to Pete Alonso as it is. You know what I mean? Pete Alonso is not David Stearns' guy. I think a lot of people fail to understand that. But the most shocking here is that Steve Cohen, in that same report, is fully supporting David Stearns and is just taking this sidelined approach in whatever David Stearns decides. We've seen in years past where negotiations were up in the air. Steve Cohen steps in and offers that extra little bit of money to get a deal done for a guy that he wants in this organization. He did it for Juan Soto. I understand Juan Soto, Pete Alonso is not Juan Soto. I get that. But there's a deeper meaning to this all. And then we can get into discussion of, do the Toronto Blue Jays actually strike a deal for an extension with Vlad? I don't think they will, to be honest with you. I don't think Vlad Jr. wants to be in Toronto. I think he's going to hold out. And I think he's going to force the Blue Jays' hand to either go into the season in a contract year, like the Mets did with Pete Alonso, or just trade him right as soon as spring training is going to start. So, I don't know, man. This is getting crazy.
On SNY and Baseball Night in New York, everybody was talking about, especially on social media, when is Steve Cohen going to step in? Well, Andy Martino said it on Baseball Night in New York. This is his exact quote. Steve Cohen is fully supportive of Stearns' approach, according to sources with direct knowledge of his thinking, along with Pete Alonso. So again, this is not just a Stearns being a cheap person. This is not a cheap guy or a cheap GM or anything like that. He is having 100% support for Steve Cohen. And I'm telling you guys from the beginning, not just about the play on the field. There is something internally going on with Pete Alonso, with this team for years, within the clubhouse, within the organization. Not saying that he's a bad guy or anything like that. There's something going on. It's been years in the making here, right? There's a reason why the team has listened to Francisco Lindor when he speaks. There's a reason why Nimmo has taken that leadership role over Pete Alonso as well, right? They don't listen to Pete Alonso. I don't know if they think he's real or he's just throwing you a spilling goods. I'm telling you guys, there's more to it than just the play on the field, because at this point, it does not make any sense anymore. And I said this prior. I don't know what hot stove was. It might have been a couple ago when I said I think the Mets pulled the offer off the table once he declined the 3 for $90. If that's officially true, and why he came back with the exclusive 3-year deal, whatever the number is or the opt-outs is, I think that exclusive offer was because the Mets pulled that offer. I think they already says, you know what, you're not going to take our offer. This is the second time you declined an offer from us over 2 years, over a year basically. The 7 for 158 and now the 3 for 90. Like, at some point, do you want to be a Met or do you not? That is where the Mets are at this point, right? Yeah. There is nobody that the Mets are bidding against. There might be a team out there that'll give you a 3-year deal, but then nobody's giving you a 4-year deal. You would have took it already. We all know that. You would not have come back with an exclusive 3-year deal for the New York Mets if you had a 4+ year deal from another team. We all know that. Nobody's stupid. Scott Boras isn't fooling anybody. Pete Alonso, you're not fooling anybody. This is the fact. This is the fact that Pete Alonso doesn't actually want to be a Met. All that bullshit he told you for years to the media, especially last year, was all nonsense. Because he had an opportunity to sign that 158, which was a very fair deal. It was a couple of $1 million over the qualifying offer for that year, and he was going to be in the top 3 or 4 top first baseman paid first baseman in the league. So he wasn't getting lowballed or anything like that. He would have been paid at that time, the market, for what he didn't even deserve. He's
That's a
not
fair
better
deal.
than Freeman. He's not better than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He is not better than Matt Olson. And it was right around the number in between Freeman and in between Olson where he should be in the price range, just based on the market and the year that the money he should get. It was a fair deal. He didn't want to take it. He would have got the security and the $22 million per year that he's looking for now. Because you're not going to get a 7-year deal and think you're going to get $29 million, similar to what Vlad got in his arbitration. You're just not getting that. So the fact of the matter is that Pete Alonso doesn't want to be a Met. And
I don't know about that, Rob. I don't know about all that.
I don't believe that one bit, because he had opportunities to do it. And yeah, look, I have no problem with betting on yourself, right? When he declined that 7 for 158, I understood what he was trying to do, because he just saw Aaron Judge bet on himself and have a massive season, right? Maybe if he had a massive season, there would have been more teams bidding on him, and maybe the price would have got, a little crazy, but the Mets might have had to do it. I said this from the beginning. I think the Mets would have gone 5, 6, maybe even 7 years on Pete Alonso if there was a bidding war for Pete Alonso. Because there is none, there's no need to bid for you. There's no need to give him a 5-year deal or even a 4-year deal when nobody else is doing it. And that's why when people, like I was listening to WFN all day today, and the fans were like, why don't you just give him a 5-year deal? What's the difference? He's your homegrown guy. It's not about that. Especially the prospect of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., possibly an option. And because that news came out today, now I don't know specifically if the Mets leaked that on purpose after this whole situation with Pete Alonso and the exclusive deal and all the other stuff that's been coming out in, with John Heyman and everything like that.
We have another exclusive report, Rob, by the way, from John Heyman as we speak. So
yeah, I just saw it's from the New York Post, right?
Yeah.
Again, what is it?
Well, he basically says here the Mets and Pete Alonso are continuing to talk about a possible deal, at least in the short term, although there still seems to be a gap between the original offer and then the counter offer, basically alluding to the fact that the original offer was 3 for 90, and then Pete Alonso's camp is coming. Well, we don't know what the original offer was. We're just speculating that it's 3 for 90. But then the counter offer from Pete Alonso last week, where it was 3 years, and then we don't know the AAV. While the sides are said to be making progress on at least the structure of the proposed deal that's expected to be for 3 years and includes at least one opt-out, there was no word if the two sides have closed the substantial financial hurdle that's hung over these high-profile talks.
So basically, they figured out the opt-out.
Right.
I mean,
and then they've settled on 3 years and they figured out the opt-out. And then this is the funny thing about it. The Mets have let Alonso's camp know they need a decision, and soon, on whether the two sides can do a deal, as they want to make sure they leave themselves enough time and options to pivot elsewhere prior to spring training.
I'm telling you this right now,
that's
Chris,
the key.
That is very telling. The fact that the matter is that rumor came out, or that report came out about the Vladimir Guerrero, the Mets checked in and spoke to the Blue Jays. I'm telling you right now, this has happened. This has been in talk for a while. They've been talking for a while. It's just a fact, right? It's no coincidence that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on his Instagram account posted his jeweler, and he has family in New York and he has people in New York and stuff like that. That is all related here, right? Everything is related here. And I'm telling you this right now, the fact that was reported tells me the Mets are probably giving him an end date here, because they're absolutely right. They can't let the Blue Jays trade Vlad somewhere else, right? You can't have that happen. You can't be one of the teams. You can't be one of the final. You have to be one of the final 2 teams in on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You can't be holding the stick here and keep on playing games with Pete Alonso, because then Bregman comes off the board. Maybe they will pivot to Anthony Santander, who can play first base. You cannot waste time, because all you're doing is hurting yourself at this point, right? You can survive without Pete Alonso. It is possible. There's other players out there, right? The Mets technically want Pete Alonso, but for what they want him for. And what he probably, I don't think he deserves a 5. Well, I can't say he doesn't deserve a 5-6 year. That's not fair. But people don't. There's nobody around baseball that believes he deserves a long-term deal because for whatever reason, whatever metrics they have, and clearly they all have the same metrics on Pete Alonso because somebody would have offered him a long-term deal by now. I truly think. I think I would not be shocked if they gave him an end date the end of the week. Like they have to, because if they checked in with the Blue Jays, and I'm assuming the check-in isn't just today or yesterday. It's been ongoing. And maybe they are discussing, a couple of reports came out. I know, Hector and Mike, Hector Gomez, Mike Rodriguez, they're not the best sources around. But you know what? Right after that report from both of those guys, Andy Martino said that they checked in. So somewhere in between, they're talking with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., or Toronto about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And I think there's actually more legs to this because I think when the decision is made for whatever party, the Mets or the Alonso, to move on, or it's not going to happen, the Mets have to pivot quickly. And if they can work out a trade with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., there is no way Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to free agency. The Mets aren't going to make that huge deal with a ton of prospects without the knowledge of Vladimir Guerrero willing to sign an extension. And let's be clear, he was trying. He said he would stay with Toronto if they met his number. So again, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, or about a couple of hot stoves ago. Toronto knows his number, and they're not willing to go there, or at least they don't think they should go there at this moment. So the Mets kind of have an idea of what that number is. Clearly, there's a little bit in between, closed door talks with his agent and saying, hey, what is his number? Because the Mets know his number by now, and they wouldn't be willing to check in and see what it would take to get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And if you can sign a 26, at the time he's 25, but let's say this time before the season starts, you trade for him and you make an extension, a 26-year-old first baseman that is a better ball player than Pete Alonso, you do it. He makes you better. And at the end of the day, you got two 26-year-olds that are going to be the core of this team after Lindor gets past his prime and Nimmo gets past his prime. Now you can step in Juan Soto. You can step in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. while they're 29, 30 years old, while Lindor and Nimmo are in their mid-30s, along with Vientos and Alvarez and whoever else might still be around in the farm system to come up and help us. Like, that's what the Mets are trying to do here. They're trying to set up a core that they have right now and win now with that core, but also have the next generation of core guys. That's what they're trying to do. That's sustainable success. That's how you do that. And if you do it, I don't want to hear not one person complain about prospects, because there is probably not one guy in the system most likely is going to be as good as Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It's a possibility, guys. It is a true possibility. I'm not sure if I'm breaking up. Do I sound clear, Chris?
Yeah, you sound clear to me. Hopefully, first of all, let's get this out of the way. We're both sick, so we apologize if we're coughing and clearing our nose out. We're both sick. We're doing this stream for you all because we love Mets baseball and we appreciate you guys' support. But yeah, audio sounds clear.
Okay. I'm just making sure, because I saw somebody said it cracked a little bit.
Yeah. I agree with you on your sentiment, though. You make a trade if it's on the table. I'm still skeptical that they do, right? Because again, if he hits the open market, you can just go ahead and sign him. Just off this conversation, do you think there's a world where Pete Alonso and Guerrero Jr. coexist on the same team, or no?
Man, if the Mets pull away out of that 3-year conversation with Pete Alonso, and the Mets do trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Pete Alonso's still out there by like the first week in spring training, and he's willing to take a 1-year, $35 million deal or something like that, I think that's the only way. That's the only way.
I can't see it either.
Yeah, I doubt that. And again, that would be interesting. I tell you, that would be a scary ass lineup. But I think the Mets have bent over backwards for Pete Alonso throughout this entire process, starting from last offseason. They've done that. They were willing to do that. And again, people talk, oh, well, they decided to give Brandon Nimmo all this money in all these years. Yeah, but there was a bidding war for Brandon Nimmo. Remember, he was this close to going to Colorado for similar money than the Mets got, but they gave him that 8th year, and that's when he came to the Mets. Like, we have to understand that, right? People are like, oh, well, how can you give, Juan Soto $765 million and all these incentives? Well, there was a bidding war. Again, I do believe that there was a bidding war for Pete Alonso. I don't know if the Mets would go to 6-7 years if they had to, and maybe they already would have pivoted. But I think it would have been more clear for the Mets saying, all right, I'm not going 6-7 years for Pete Alonso. We have to pivot. Because there's no bidding war for Pete Alonso, this process has taken longer because Pete Alonso was trying to get a 6-year deal. Obviously, that was just reported, and the Mets weren't willing to do it. And that's just the way it goes. And it's unfortunate, but you got to also understand that the Mets also have other priorities, right? It's not Pete Alonso when their roster is done. They still need bullpen. If it's not Alonso, they still need at least one more big bat in there, maybe even two. So there's a lot to look at when it comes to the Pete Alonso situation. And that last report basically saying that the Mets need a decision soon, and I'm assuming they give them to the end of the week. They have to pivot. Like, it is what it is. If it ain't Pete Alonso, so what? Like, Met fans would be crying like children because it's Pete Alonso, and everybody cares about that stupid home run record that is embarrassing to say the least in this Mets history. Like, I don't care about that. I really don't. If you care about that, then you truly don't want to win. Like, I truly believe that. Like, if your first sentence out of your mouth is, well, Pete Alonso can break the home run record for the Mets history, which isn't very high to begin with, and your a sentence before that should be, I want to win a championship, but it would be nice for Pete Alonso to break that record. That's the way you say it. Don't tell me the history and then complain later that the Mets don't win. Like, you just can't have it both ways. You can't.
Listen, a couple of things here, Frank. Appreciate you gifting a membership. Shout out to Frank and the continued support. Definitely appreciate that. Second thing is that it really does seem, again, it seems like the Mets want Pete Alonso back. I tweeted this out on my X account. I stated the fact that by opening day, Pete Alonso will be the first baseman for the New York Mets. That was even after Martino's report. But what the Mets are not going to do is give into the demands of Alonso and Scott Boras. They have a set price. They have a set price, and they are willing to watch Alonso walk out that door if he does not meet their standards of what they want, because he had the opportunity previously. It was a generous offer. He passed it up. Now he has to meet their demands, and it makes complete sense. And again, just being courteous to the fact that the Mets clearly do have an offer on the table, as per what John Heyman just wrote and what I just read out loud in this live stream. The Mets have an offer to Pete Alonso on the table. He's either going to accept it or deny it at the end of the day, because he's come back with a counteroffer, and that's clearly not working out in his favor because the Mets are not budging on their original offer. So that's that. And it's like, at least, if they want to play games, be courteous to the New York Mets at the very least so they can just look elsewhere. Because, again, there are other options out there on the market. Santander probably being the option that makes the most sense situationally and replacing at least a little bit of that potential power of Pete Alonso. Not fully, but at least a little bit. And I see a lot of... Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go. No, go.
No, and my last thing is that I see a lot of people saying that Vlad's going to be traded at the deadline. Are we really sure about that? Because I don't think the Toronto Blue Jays want to go down the route that the Mets just did with Pete Alonso, potentially letting Pete Alonso walk for free. They don't want to go down that route. So I really think to maximize, even though he's going to be a rental regardless for whichever team ends up with him, if they do trade him, I think to maximize, if they're thinking about maximizing their return, it's going to be in this offseason, and it's going to be closer, again, to that spring training mark, because Vlad Jr. has already come out and said, I am not negotiating a new deal with the Toronto Blue Jays once spring training starts. So I think it's this offseason, Rob, if it happens.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking too. The other thing, because of the report that came out about Anthony Santander taking a short-term deal, it's going to be less money than what Pete Alonso would get from the Mets per year. So even if it is a 3-year deal from Anthony Santander, it's probably going to be from like what, 22, 24 million. So it's probably going to be $6, $7, $8 million less than what you're going to give Pete Alonso per year. And you can still go after Vladimir Guerrero Jr. even if you get Anthony Santander, because it's basically the same amount of money you're spending at that point. If you get Pete Alonso, I mean, it's going to be more with Pete Alonso, but the Mets can actually save money in that aspect, knowing that they can get Anthony Santander. You can put him in left field, DH Nimmo, as we talked about, and go get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to play first base. And now you're talking about a really damn good lineup here. And that's the other thing too. I think they're actually looking at it in that perspective, right? If they can get Anthony Santander and say Pete Alonso's out of the question, he's not taking that deal. The Mets are not budging from their 3 for $90. It is what it is. If they do that, they can sign Anthony Santander for what? Let's say 3 years. I don't know. Let's say $25 million per year. Let's say it's 3 years, $75 million, right? It's about $15-16 million less than the Pete Alonso offer. So that's $15 million they still have in their piggy bank, in their payroll to spend. Even if they do get Vladimir Guerrero Jr., if that's their plan all along to get Vladimir Guerrero Jr., they can get Anthony Santander, who's a very good player, for less money overall, around $50 million, about $5 to $6 million less per year, and save money on that payroll to get whatever else you need. If you want to go after another starting pitcher, maybe they won't, but the bullpen, maybe they will use that money to go after Tanner Scott, right? That's where they can still get really good players in here and have money left over in their budget to go get that big name bullpen arm like a Tanner Scott, Chris.
Yeah, I agree. Or they can just re-sign Pete Alonso and go after the guy that we're going to be talking about in our next topic too. Like, again, there's so many different ways to go about this. And I think that Mets fans lose sight of the fact that Pete Alonso, and I mentioned this again in one of my videos that I posted earlier today as I discussed this Andy Martino report of Pete Alonso more in depth on my channel. Pete Alonso is really not the end-all be-all for the New York Mets. Do I still project him to be, that first base option for the Mets when it's all said and done come opening day? Yeah, I do. But again, let's not – and this is what irks me with his fan base, pretending like there's no other options on the market if they don't go after Pete Alonso and ink a deal with Pete Alonso. There are other options, and the Mets would still be okay if Pete Alonso is not a New York Met. And that is my sentiment. There's so many other options. Santander is a great one. And I'm not saying that Robert Jr., I'm not sure. Do you want to transition into Robert Jr. right now?
Let's go.
I'm not sure if, Robert Jr. is not going to obviously replace the first baseman situation, right? This guy's an outfielder. He's a center fielder that can move over to the corner outfield. But again, I released a video yesterday talking about Robert Jr. Again, there's no solidified reports that the Mets are in on a Robert Jr. trade. I'm just taking a look at it from an overview perspective of the current Mets roster and the outfielders that the Mets have right now. And I just keep on coming back to this discussion of Brandon Nimmo potentially being a hybrid DH to get him off of his feet for at least even half the games in 2025 with the plethora of injuries that he's had to deal with, including the plantar fasciitis. This makes sense because, again, as we talked about with Santander, if you sign him, he could platoon with Nimmo in left field. Same thing with Robert Jr. And this is clearly under the assumption that Santander isn't here, because if you ask me who I'm choosing from between Santander and Robert Jr., I'm going to tell you Anthony Santander, because you at least have a little bit more of a proven track record than the sole single season of Robert Jr. in his All-Star campaign in 2023. And this is kind of like, this is a little bit of a letdown topic. After we're talking about Vlad Guerrero Jr., I understand that. But at the end of the day, Do you think at any point in this offseason the Mets have had any discussions like when they were going through those Garrett Crochet talks with the White Sox? Do you think that Robert Jr.'s name was ever mentioned in said discussions? What do you think?
I think so.
Yeah,
I
me
think it
too.
was, I think it was a package. Like if the Mets were, if the reports are true that the Mets had to give up a Jet Williams and stuff like that, it had to be that Luis Robert was in that trade. Like it wouldn't make sense otherwise for Crochet. I know I'm not crazy about the prospect and hugging the prospects and all that, but you're not doing that offer for just Crochet. I think Robert would have been, Luis Robert would have been in there as well, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, I think that's an option. If the Mets get Pete Alonso, I wouldn't be shocked if they go after Luis Robert in a trade. Why wouldn't you? Right? He didn't have a good year last year. I think he played 90 games, 100 games,
100
not a
games
lot of
flat.
games. Yeah. So he didn't have a good season. But again, he was on one of the worst teams. He was on one of the worst teams in baseball. So again, that can change a lot of people's perspective, or moods and the way you play when only in 2023 he had an all-star season. Putting him on this team would make him better, obviously. And you put him in left field. Like, you just do that. And then you DH Nimmo, right? Nimmo's a problem. We don't know if he's healthy, right? We got, a month until spring training. We don't know if Nimmo's actually going to be ready to go. Like, we have no idea. So that's the thing you talked about, options, right? Not just talking about first base. There's options out there. There's still Anthony Santander. I know Bregman's kind of on the way on the wayside now when it comes to talking about that. But again, the Mets can pivot, right? There's still options out there. That's why the Mets are giving an end date to Pete Alonso, because they have to pivot. They cannot wait for Pete Alonso to take this into fucking February. Because if you take it into February, more guys are going to be off the board, which leaves you less options. And the Mets don't want to be bent over a barrel. And now Pete Alonso has the leverage. You can't have that happen right now, because the Mets have all the leverage in the world right now. Because on Friday, they could say, you know what, Pete, we're done. Trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., sign Anthony Santander, and get Tanner Scott in here. And now you're talking about a team a week, just 3 days ago that still hadn't solidified a roster yet, and now you can feel very confident going into the season with a roster like that with Santander and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Tanner Scott in the back end of your bullpen along with Edwin Diaz. Like, that's a huge deal. But yeah, the option about Luis Robert is a perfect scenario if the Mets sign Pete Alonso. If they sign Pete Alonso, I can see them trading for Luis Robert Jr. I think that's a fact. I think, why not? Like, I don't think Santander could still be possible, but I don't see the Mets doing that at that point, to be quite honest. I think Robert Jr. is a good choice if you get Pete Alonso.
Yeah, and because Robert only comes with a $15 million cap hit in 2025, and then you have club option years for him at $20 million apiece over the next 2 seasons after that. So a very cheap option for what he produced and what he can produce. And again, you talk about a guy that's been riddled with injuries. If you put into a platoon scenario with Nimmo in left field, where he can also DH a handful of games for you, if not the majority of games for you, if you're still stuck on Nimmo playing left field and want that to happen, that's the perfect scenario for him to have a bounce back season, and more so in line with what he did in 2023 rather than 2024 for Robert Jr. Big salute to Pure Adrenaline Sports. Please go ahead and subscribe over to the PAS channel if you get a chance, if you haven't done so already. Regular Mets live streams, in-game live streams over there on that channel. Thank you for the super chat, John. It means a lot. And this is what my point was and what we didn't talk about with the Pete Alonso sort of controversy right now, is that in that exclusive report from John Heyman, well, actually, this was from Martino, but John Heyman's report said that they want ample time to be able to pivot if Pete Alonso and his camp don't think the Mets and Alonso can get a deal done, right? So that means that they are looking to upgrade the offense even past Pete Alonso, which means that there are more options on the table that they view as fits. And this is even coming with the Martino report stating that they are still completely comfortable if it gets to that point with Vientos handling a bulk of games at first base. I know some Mets fans could be uneasy about that. I can't lie. It makes me a little bit uneasy, just a little bit. It's not the end all be all. It's not the end of the world. It just makes me a little bit uneasy. But again, if they are comfortable with the internal route of going with Vientos for the time being in 2025 until the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. situation presents itself, and then you have Heyman stating that they still want to pivot elsewhere, you don't need to just address first base in order to make your lineup better. That's where your Jerks and Profars of the world come in. This is where we're having this discussion on Luis Robert Jr. You can still add to other areas of your team and be a better ball club for it. So I don't want Mets fans to lose sight of that because, again, it's not just first base that they must address. And if you're telling me that you don't want to bring a guy like Robert Jr. on because the Mets already have Starling Marte on this team and they already have a guy like Tyrone Taylor, with all due respect, you all know that I love Tyrone Taylor, big fan of Tyrone Taylor. But if you're going to make me decide between Tyrone Taylor and Luis Robert, come on, give me Luis Robert. So, Again, there's a lot of different ways to go about this lineup and making it better on an everyday basis outside of addressing first base, like from the external route.
Correct. Exactly. And before we head to our next topic, I think that's the thing. Like if the Mets they seem like they're more comfortable moving Vientos to first base if need be, even if it's for 1 year, until if they can't get a trade done with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. now, they can feel comfortable with Vientos at first base for 1 year. But that leaves another option. That leaves Bregman if they're interested, because they were interested in Bregman early on in the offseason. They could just go to that if they really needed to, worst case scenario. And if you do get Vladimir Guerrero the following season, you just DH Vientos, or you can play Vientos at third base, and DH Bregman every now and then, go back and forth with those guys. Like, you could do that, like, to make your team better. And again, why is it okay for the Dodgers to sign anybody regardless of position and find a spot for them, but it's not okay for the Mets to do it? Like people are like, oh, you can't move Vientos to first base. Why not? If you trust Vientos enough and his bat's that good, you do what you need to do defensively. They did it with Mookie Betts. They do it with all these guys. And I'm not saying Vientos is Mookie Betts or anything like that, but like they knew that Vientos can play first base. Like he's not a butcher. Like he's played first base enough in the minor leagues where I'm okay with that. Like he was doing that when Beatty was the third baseman. Like we all forget that. So I think they're more comfortable than we actually think of Vientos playing first base. And that's why, with the options still available, and now the Mets telling Pete Alonso, this is an end game here. You got to decide. It's either our offer or no offer, and we're done. We got to go elsewhere. And that's the whole point here. Like, if the Mets don't like the number for Anthony Santander, all right, fine. But you can move Vientos to first, get Bregman in here, and your lineup is just as good. That's a fact. Like, I'm not saying Bregman was never a big home run guy, right? You too many people look at just the home runs like, oh, Pete Alonso's better. He's not. He's not. Overall, he's not a better player. And not saying that I would do that. Again, I still want Pete Alonso in here. If you get Pete Alonso in here, I think the Mets can pivot in so many different ways to benefit this team. Even if they don't go to Anthony Santander to put him in left field, say if they go to Jerks and Profar, fine. That's fine. That's still a 20 home run guy with speed that could play multiple outfield positions. It gives versatility. I'm okay with that. But the Mets can't handcuff themselves with Pete Alonso. And that's why the Vladimir Guerrero situation is popping up now in reports. That is why, obviously, there's no reports yet with Luis Robert, but you just assume with the Garrett Crochet talks the Mets have with the White Sox, it would be stupid and basically fireable if you didn't talk about Luis Robert in that trade as well, or at least separately. And that's also a possibility if you get Pete Alonso to add an outfielder, because the Mets are clearly looking for an outfielder. Like that's a fact. They've done it with Jock Peterson. They did it with Teoscar Hernandez. They probably will go after Santander if the Pete Alonso situation doesn't work out. They're looking for an outfielder, Chris. And that's where it is at this point, because looking for an outfielder this hard tells me that they don't trust Nimmo staying healthy.
And not only that is that if Nimmo goes down, look at the outfield outside of Soto.
Correct.
It's sparse offensively. Defensively, it's still great, right? With Siri and Tyrone Taylor, right? But it's sparse outside of that. And you get into a 2022 situation where you're relying on Mark Canha. No disrespect to him, great Met, but just not an everyday starter. That team needed somebody better as an everyday starter than Mark Canha. So again, having those options and building that depth, the Met have depth at the outfield spot right now.
Yeah.
But how many guys can you really trust on an everyday basis? I mean, Tyrone Taylor was entrusted last year to almost be an everyday starter. He's not meant to be, and he was never meant to be an everyday starter. He's a fourth outfielder at best. You know what I mean? And so, again, there's no harm in adding more depth at that position. And at that point, if you're able to do it, you have flexibility to part ways with a guy like Starling Marte. And again, I appreciate everything that Starling Marte has done in this organization, but he is a liability at the end of the day because you never know when that guy is going to go down and, hit the IL. So the same thing can be said for Robert Jr. at that point too, because he's had his plethora of injuries too. But again, when we talk about maximizing the offense, that's how I view that. And I see someone saying that Vlad is better than Soto. No, he's not. No, he's not. Vlad is not better than Soto. Please, let's calm down for just 1 second.
Yeah.
He's a great ball player. He's gonna get his money. It wouldn't shock me if he gets more than $400 million, but he's no Juan Soto. Let's not mistake that.
And in that same comment, he said that, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to test free agency. He is already willing. He was willing to sign an extension with the Blue Jays, right? There were talks. So he's already willing to do that. If he gets traded to a team that he probably wanted to get traded to and has one of his best friends there and say Juan Soto, he would sit down with the team that traded for him to extend. Because again, there is a number he told Toronto that he wants where he would sign a deal. I don't know why they're not doing that. Maybe they just think that if they sign Vlad, they're not going to be able to do nothing else, which is weird because they were trying to spend a ton of money. But they know the number. And if they know the number, damn well the team that trades for him knows that number as well. The team that trades for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is not going to give 3-4 top 10 plus prospects and not have a number in mind, or at least an understanding that Vlad could sign an extension here. This is similar to a Lindor situation. Again, we can argue if Lindor is better than Vlad, if Vlad is better than Lindor. Different positions, different players, but the Mets knew that Lindor was willing to sign an extension, right? That's why they made that trade. That's why they traded all their shortstops on the roster, because they had a good feeling that Lindor would sign an extension. They're not going to make that deal, or any team's not going to make that deal for 1 year and give up all those prospects, not knowing that Vlad can't sign an extension. No team's going to do that. So the Mets already, that's why when you check in, you make sure that Vlad is willing to sign an extension, because you're not going to trade 4 top 10 prospects for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and have him for 1 year. I mean, you could, but the Mets don't work that way. And David Stearns is not going to work that way. So they know the number that Vlad wants to extend. That's why they're checking in, and that's why it's a possibility.
I saw the comparison between the situation of the Yankees when they traded for Juan Soto, who they knew was, potentially a 1-year rental. Look at the package that they sent over to San Diego. And I understand that, San Diego kind of lucked out because I believe it was Michael King that went over there and performed really well. Yeah. But that package for Juan Soto was a little bit light, if I'm not mistaken.
It was, they got a good reliever that was, and that's it. They didn't really get anything special. So, but again, and that was the other thing. The issue with that was nobody was willing to trade for Juan Soto and give up top prospects, because most teams knew that he wasn't going to sign an extension. And I don't think the Yankees knew he was going to sign an extension. Maybe they thought they can get him in and speak to him, but it was clear very quickly that he wasn't going to sign an extension once they got him. And I think the Mets, the Yankees had kind of that, that little, I don't think we did a good job here, because at the end of the day, they didn't retain that guy that they gave up 4 or 5 prospects to, and a guy that could be in their rotation where they might have not had to overpay for Max Fried and Michael King. Like that's the trickle down effect. And I'm not saying Max Fried's going to be bad, but that's the trickle down effect. Like you could have had a cheap pitcher that's very good in your rotation and Juan Soto, but you ended up having none of those, and you had to overpay for Max Fried. Like that's the downfall, if you want to call it a downfall. It is. Like that's the thing. I think if the Mets were willing to trade for Juan Soto last year, they probably would have extended him somehow. But the Yankees probably didn't do enough of their homework to know that he wasn't going to extend. Or they were so scared that they sucked and they embarrassed themselves the year before that they needed somebody in here, and they're doing anything they can to win, which I completely understand and I appreciate. But they didn't. They screwed that up.
Or maybe that they were just too overconfident and they thought the pinstripe effect would just have the magical wonders. You know what I mean? Like, come on now. Anyways, let's get into Juan Soto's former team, the San Diego Padres, as it pertains to Dylan Cease. Again, we're talking about the pitching staff. I'm not convinced that they're going to go after another starter, especially via trade. But with what the San Diego Padres got going on right now and that turmoil on the ownership level front, there's a plethora of different guys that could be on the trade block. For me, and I don't know much about Padres baseball. If there's a Padres fan that happens to stumble upon this live stream, let us know your thoughts and opinions. But a major contract that they could get off their books if they are willing and if they want to shed payroll, if that's their goal, is probably Jake Cronenworth, because I do believe he had an extension either last season or the season before that, which was surprising to me because, again, I think of Jake Cronenworth, I'm like, he's good, but he's like not that great to want to like extend right away. I don't know how that situation played out, but I really also think that the Roki Sasaki decision will have a lot of bearing on whether the Padres let Cease go. Cease is still only going to be making $13.75 million for the 2025 season. He's not making $20+ million. The arbitration, this is his last arbitration year before free agency next season, and it's only at just under $14 million worth of a cap hit. So I don't know, man. The Padres are a wild card. I'm not ever really confident in the Mets and the Padres striking a deal in a trade. But again, it just seems like the Mets have been linked to Dylan Cease for quite some time, even going back to last offseason before he became a Padre. If the Padres are willing to put their ego aside and send him to an NL competitor, why not? Why not entertain it?
Yeah, and if you're a Mets fan right now and the link of Dylan Cease and the Mets, you want Roki Sasaki to go to the Padres because that makes Cease very expendable.
Absolutely.
At that point. And you know what? The Mets can make a package for Dylan Cease. I'm not saying you have to give up a ton, but you can be willing to move, one top 10 prospect and maybe an extra top 20 prospect in the process to get him. You can do that, no problem. And that's what I'm hoping for. I hope Roki Sasaki goes to the Padres. Yeah, I know we had to face the Padres, hope possibly, in the playoffs, but during the season. But again, let the West figure that out for themselves. They're going to be beating each other up the whole year. So let them figure that out. But Roki Sasaki to the Padres makes it very possible that Dylan Cease can be on the market, and that's when the Mets can pivot. I don't believe for a second that David Stearns is going to leave this rotation the way it is. It does not make any sense. David Stearns is not stupid enough. Maybe I'll eat my words. I don't think he's stupid enough to think that this rotation is actually good. I'm sorry. It doesn't. There's way too many ifs, way too many question marks. I still think Castillo's a possibility. I still think on January 15th, a month before spring training, The New York Mets are going to make a trade for a starting pitcher. And I think one of those guys are going to be Dylan Cease or Luis Castillo. I'm still on the Luis Castillo bandwagon. Choo-choo. I'm really on that bandwagon right now. I'm on that train right now. Stearns is going to – now, again, if you give Vladimir Guerrero Jr., it's going to be very hard to, I mean, maybe you could. But that's why I think the Mets wanted this Pete Alonso situation to come to a decision here quickly. And they already made that ultimatum to Pete Alonso because of this situation, right? They can see if they can get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. If they can't, you pivot with your prospects to get a Cease or a Castillo and make some sign-ins to fill out the lineup as well, Chris. So, yeah, I mean, give me either one of them, right? Castillo, I kind of want more because he's under control. Dylan Cease, you're going to have to give up something and risk losing him. Maybe the Mets could extend him, maybe. But again, he's a guy that I don't know if he's going to extend when he probably can be one of the better pitchers on the market next year if he has a good season, and he can get $30 million probably. Castillo makes a little bit more sense because I think you would have to, you might have to pay a little bit more for Castillo, but you're going to have him for the next couple of seasons. And I don't want to give up too much for Dylan Cease. That's a possible, rental at that point.
Well, Cease is also going to make more than Castillo when he signs his next contract, right? I think that he's going to make more than the $22 million that Castillo is making. I think just over that right now. But there's pros and cons to both pitchers. Like you said, you have a contract already. It's laid out in front of you for Castillo. I think Castillo's body of work in this league is a lot more solidified already. But with Cease, maybe more upside with the youth, right? He's 28 going on 29, entering the prime of his career. The package, see, this is the thing. I don't know. Who do you think you'd have to give up more for in a potential scenario, given that Cease could be a rental, but also given how badly the Mariners want to shed that payroll, presumably with the rest of Castillo's contract? Which do you think would be a more advantageous route for giving up less for the New York Mets? I'm stumped on this.
I think this has something to do with Pete Alonso. I know I want to keep on bringing up Pete Alonso, but when it comes to the Mariners, if the Mets and Alonso don't come to a deal, I'm assuming at the end of this week, I think the Mariners will be more interested in Pete Alonso. So I think it would be easier to get Castillo because I know Castillo, the Mariners have been asking a ton for Luis Castillo, which makes no sense if you're going to take on that contract. You're not going to get what you're asking for prospect-wise. So I think it'll be less for Castillo because the Mets will be willing to take on that money, and the Mariners need a bat. And I think they'd be willing to really come down on the offer that they're asking for Castillo. I think Cease is going to cost you a little bit more because even though if the Padres get Sasaki, they're not going to give up for a chump of change. They know how good Cease is. He is a top of the line starter. You can probably get I would say a top 5 prospect for Dylan Cease, depending on what they're looking for. I'm not sure if they're going to be looking for a pitcher, a prospect pitcher. Maybe they're looking. I'm not sure what the Padres need in their farm system or even on the Major League roster for that matter. But I'd be willing to do it for either one of them, to be quite honest. But I think Cease is going to cost more, just based on the Castillo money.
Fair. That's fair. But again, so someone I think is Ron in the chat, I believe, said, and this is a big worry for me too, because again, we've heard crickets from the Atlanta Braves this offseason so far. We know that they have a move up their sleeve. I am extremely worried that they are going to somehow land Dylan Cease in a deal. I think that's who they are targeting, to be completely honest with you. And I just hope that doesn't happen. I hope if it's not the Mets, I hope it's definitely not the Braves. But I agree with you. I think I'd lean a little bit more towards the Castillo route, even though I like the youth movement. Again, with Dylan Cease, I just feel a little bit more comfortable with the body of work and just the workhorse that Luis Castillo is, because you know what you're going to get from him. So, but I think that we're kind of switching tunes here, because back in mid to late December, I was very adamant that the Mets were going to get another starting pitcher. even beyond Sean Manaea. And now I'm a little bit more skeptical. And then you are holding the faith here between us two, to be honest with you.
Because of the way the offseason is going. See, I thought the Mets were going to spend more on the lineup already. And I think they were just going to let the lineup be the rotation be what the rotation is. But now that I'm like, if they end up getting just one more bat, let's say if they just bring in Pete Alonso and nobody else, like, how confident are you in this team? Like, all right,
No, it's not good. That's not good enough.
Let's say we get Tanner Scott. All right, let's say we solidified his bullpen. The bullpen looks pretty damn good. It's not good enough. I'm sorry. Pete Alonso is not going to do enough. I'm sorry. It's just not. I'm sorry. Pete Alonso is not as good. Like, could we stop? He's declined 3 years in a row. And the numbers just get worse in clutch situations, in late innings, in runners in scoring position. Like, that is a problem. He's not going to get better with he's not going to bat in front of Juan Soto. Let's make that very clear. He's not. He is probably going to be protected by Vientos. Like, it's probably going to be Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Vientos. 1, 2, 3, 4 if they only get Alonso. So Alonso needs the protection because he can't be a protector. And now you put him behind Soto because you can't really put him anywhere else. So Soto is probably going to see less pitches to hit. And now you got to count on Pete Alonso to get those hits where Soto gets on base. And Aaron Judge made sure Juan Soto got home during the season. He made sure of it. I don't know if Pete Alonso can do that. You know, I'm not talking about the playoffs now. I'm not talking about a handful of games. You got to get to the playoffs. Pete Alonso needs to help that out. And you know, it seems like Alonso's in his, and that's where I think the Mets are thinking too, Chris. Like, there's a situation here that this whole process is because they don't trust Pete Alonso, regardless of where you put him in the lineup. Like, can you put him behind Vientos? No. Like, why would you pitch to Vientos at that point? It makes no sense. Like, if there's 2 outs or even 1 out for that matter, Juan Soto gets on base. Damn, now we got to pitch Vientos. You're gonna pitch to Vientos or Pete Alonso? You're gonna probably work around, see if you can strike out Vientos. You know, trying to make him fish outside the zone. If you don't, they have no problem pitching to Alonso to get him into a double play. Like, that's the scenario we're going to be seeing during the season, and the Mets know that. Teams couldn't wait to pitch to Pete Alonso last year. It was frustrated because he had a ton of men on base all year. And I think the Mets, and again, it's a decline the last 3 seasons, guys. Look at the numbers. It's not just last year. It's been a decline after the pandemic. And let's not talk about injuries. That's not the only issue, right? Because Lindor can still play good with a back injury. Nobody wants to talk about that. Like, it's been a steady decline. Sorry, Chris.
No, you're good. I think, to be honest with you, you know, even if we, you know, regardless of whether Pete Alonso is on this team or not, I think the one flaw that's going to help him out a lot is just stop chasing at that down and out slider. I think things are going to be a lot easier. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what it comes down to. That's really the make or break of Pete Alonso. If he's able to lay off that down and out slider, he is going to be light years of a better hitter because of it and for it than what he was in 2024. It was a miracle. Like you just mentioned, it was a miracle that the Mets even got to the playoffs, given the production that they got from guys like Nimmo and Alonso. It was a miracle. And that's thanks to Lindor, Iglesias, Vientos, and that crew. You know what I mean?
Just think, Chris. The Mets won 89 games last year with a bad season from Nimmo, a down season from Alonso. If they would have had just average back of the baseball card seasons, just close to their normal numbers, the Mets could have easily had 94, 95 wins, 96 wins. Probably division winners. Like, that's the difference. And why it's so frustrating. Because all they had to do was play to the back of their baseball cards, close to their numbers. Not even like they weren't close to their numbers last year. If they were close to the back of the baseball cards of what they could do, this team could have been a 95, 96 win team, and we might have not had been a wild card team. We could have been playing we could have won a division. We could have been playing in, waiting to play the division, or play a team, that might have been superior to us. I mean, we might have had the same fate to the Phillies, but at least we would have not had to play an extra round, or play a better team. Who knows? We might not have had to get that line of who we had to face to get to where we needed to be. Like, it's little things like that. And, I'm not saying Pete Alonso can't go back to that, but when you have a steady decline over 3 years, it's an issue. And I think the Mets know that, and the Mets see that. And obviously the rest of baseball sees that. And that's why I think the Mets thought this would have been done already, to be quite honest with you. And obviously they're frustrated at this point. They're not budging off their offer. And because there's going to be an end game, which the Mets told Pete Alonso, decisions got to be made here. I guess we'll go into this rapid fire question now.
Do you want to do this? Okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to do it after, for sure. Yeah. So the rapid fire question is this. Do you think the end game, or the decision the Mets are giving Alonso, is the end of this week? And I guess a two-part question. Is he going to take the Mets offer? Because the Mets ain't taking his offer.
Oh, that's well. Spring training is when? When is spring training starts? When?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Spring training starts the 22nd, right? So we're just about 5 weeks away,
give or take. Yeah.
Damn, man. I think it could be the end of this week. It's hard for me to put an actual metric on that, but you got to be a little bit nervous if you're the New York Mets. If you are willing to pivot to Santander, and maybe Santander's waiting for the Mets. Who knows? I mean, that could be a case. That could be the case too, right? How long are the Mets going to wait? This is the question.
I think it's got to be the end of this week.
I think it could be the end of this week. I'll agree with you there. So let's just say what? The 19th, 20th, maybe?
Yeah.
It's not. I don't think it's going to get into February. No chance they let it get into February.
If they do that, Stern's got to be fired. I'm sorry.
Not into February.
You can't do that. I think it's the end of this week, just because of the reports that are coming out now about the other scenarios.
And then you said the second part was with Alonso coming down. I really wish we got some values here with where each of these parties are at.
It's not close. It's clearly not close.
It's clearly not close, unfortunately. I wish I at least knew where the Mets were starting at. That would give me such a...
Well, let's go on the perspective that it is 3 for $90. It's $30 million per year with the 1 year opt-out, right? They got the opt-outs figured out, whatever the opt-outs are. First year, second year. I'm assuming it's both years because I don't see any other way. So it has to be the number. The number can't be if it's $4 or $5 million, the Mets are nuts. Get it done. I think it's around $40 million a year. I'm telling you, it seems like a Scott Boras type of move to give $40 million a year. I think that's what they're asking for. So what is that? 3 for 120?
I think the Mets absolute max is 31 to 32.
I think so too.
To be honest with you. And even Will Salmon of The Athletic is projecting this deal to be 3 years for what? $93.3 million. So that's just over $31 million per year. That's very reasonable. And that's assuming that Pete Alonso is probably at 35 to 36 on the safe side in his asking price right now. So I don't know.
You see, but that's the thing. I wish we knew the number for Alonso's side, just to have an idea. Because if it's the Mets are saying 31, 32, and Alonso's asking for 40, 41, that is actually a big gap. If it's $3 or $4 million, I don't think it's that much. They can always come to a middle ground. I don't think they're going to go to a middle ground if it's that far apart.
Yeah.
I think the Mets said maybe they did go up a little bit and go to $31, $32 million. And if they're only going to that and they don't get Pete Alonso, I'm okay with it. I'm not going to 38, 39, $40 million for Pete Alonso. I don't even care
No
if there's
way.
opt-outs in there. I'm not doing that. That's stupid. It doesn't make sense. Like, yeah, it might make some Met fans pissed off, but again, the logical thing here is that if you do that, there's a pretty good chance Alonso's the only extra bat you're getting in that lineup.
I wouldn't even go to 35, Rob. I wouldn't even go to 35.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't either. Like and I think that's where the Mets are at this point. And again, I give them to the end of this week. Like, give them to the playoffs start on Sunday for the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, just say, let's get it done, because I think Santander got an offer from the Blue Jays and is not taking it. Why is that? Are the Mets that interested in him that they had conversations and they're like, we don't mind giving you a higher AAV for 3 years than what you're getting from the Blue Jays? Like, there has to be a conversation there, because it doesn't make sense why Santander, who doesn't really have a market other than the Blue Jays at this point. So the Mets clearly are involved. We don't hear nothing from the Mets end at all when it comes to these reports of who they're in on. Nobody has any idea. Like, unless the Mets leak it out or Boris leaks something out, nothing gets out from the Mets. And nothing has come out with Anthony Santander except for that Blue Jays offer. So why is he not taking it? He clearly has some information. And I'm not saying it's the Mets. It could be another team. But let's say it is the Mets. The Mets might have a deal on the table ready to go. And they're telling Anthony Santander, you know what? Look, we're not going to make you wait anymore. We're giving Pete Alonso and his party an ultimatum, giving him an end date. If we sign him, we're gonna go. We're not gonna pursue you, or maybe they still will. Who knows? But if Pete Alonso's out, we're gonna get you. That could be a possibility. It seems like they're in a holding pattern with that, in my opinion.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's just a dangerous game to play. Holding out hope for Pete Alonso, if they get word that there's just no way this deal gets done, is just a dangerous game to play.
That's why they have to give an end date, and I'm glad they did.
Yeah. So my question to you is, we've heard recently today Tim Healy say that the Mets are interested in left-handed reliever. Who is it? Tim Hill?
Tim Hill, yeah.
Of the Yankees. Bad start to 2024. He's a left-hander. He was released, I believe, by the White Sox. The Yankees picked him up, and I believe in 35, just around there, something games in a Yankees uniform. He pitched extremely well.
He did.
3-pitch pitcher, sinker, slider, and a 4-seam fastball. He throws 91 max. You know me, Rob. I don't like these types of relievers. He pitches the contact. K rate is at like 10%, which is well below league average. I don't like these types of relievers. I don't. This reminds me of like Aaron Loup, who had an incredible season for the Mets and then went to the Angels and did absolutely nothing. You know what I mean? So this guy smells like, I don't know. I don't even want to project what he would be if the New York Mets signed him. But again, 34 years old, lefty, and we've heard recently that the Mets are in on Tanner Scott, or at least would be interested in a short-term deal for Tanner Scott. And at that point, if you mention Tanner Scott in a report with the Mets fans are, boom, let's get Tanner Scott. They don't want to hear nothing about any other reliever minus Tanner Scott.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, with the recent report from Tim Healy and their interest in Tim Hill, do you think Tanner Scott ends up in the Mets uniform, or do you think he goes elsewhere?
I think Tanner Scott's going to be a Met.
I'm not convinced, man. I'm not convinced.
The only reason why I'm saying it, I think Tanner Scott has nothing to do with the Pete Alonso situation, Vlad situation, any other free agent or trade that the Mets might go after, starting pitcher wise or anything like that. I don't know why that report came out of nowhere that the Mets are interested in Tanner Scott all of a sudden, and it had nothing to do with a short-term deal. Like, it wasn't even talked about that. Like, we brought that up because that has been the Mets motto since David Stearns took over. But I think they're looking at it that Diaz is going to have an opt-out soon. They want to have protection for that, just in case if he does. And I think if they are going to go with this rotation, they know they need a very good bullpen. And I think David Stearns knows that. And I think he's willing to give one time a decent contract a 4-year deal to a guy like Tanner Scott, who you know is a no-brainer. And then you can get a Tim Hill for, as an extra lefty in that bullpen, as a soft and lefty who had a good season. I do that. I think they're going to sign Tanner Scott. I don't think it involves anybody else or it relates to anybody else who they might get. They have more than enough money off the books. Like, the budget's there. They got $77 million that they still have available that they can spend. That, before they hit that third luxury tax, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I think it's less than that,
like
Rob.
Because of Mania, right? I'm sorry.
Something like that, yeah.
It's like 50, 54, 50. So they can get 2 or 3 guys, no problem. And they'll be just under that luxury tax. I still think they're going to go over because it's hard not to get anybody else. Like, if you get just Pete Alonso and Tanner Scott, I mean, I'd be okay with that. That's fine. But you still need one more bat and a couple more bullpen arms. So you're going to hit that luxury tax regardless.
Oh, they're going over.
Yeah, they're going to have to. So, yeah, I think they're going to sign Tanner Scott. I think it's going to be boom. Let's get that back end of the bullpen fixed up and ready to go. I feel a little bit more confident in going into the season with this rotation that I have no confidence in going forward, because I think the lineup will be fine, regardless if you just get Alonso. So
you're more optimistic on that front than I am, my friend. I will say that. I don't think Tanner Scott's going to be a Met, but again, I think that there's a lot of other bullpen options out there that could make this bullpen better. But again, not to the caliber of Tanner Scott. I think he's going to go close somewhere. I think he's going to want to close somewhere. He can close for the Mets on a platoon basis, but he's not going to be the everyday closer. I don't know, man. Maybe he's just like, give me my money, and then I'll go wherever you want me to. I'll be the setup guy. That could be a possibility too.
These guys want money. He worked his way and pitched so well to get his money. If somebody gives it to him, he'll pitch in the 5th inning if he has to. Like, I don't think these guys care as much as long as they get their money. Like, if Tanner Scott was, looking for 1-year deals somewhere because he can't get just to make sure he gets that big payday, then I could see him going somewhere to close for 1 year. But when you're going to get your money from somewhere, I don't think it really matters, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. So we talked about it in the beginning of the stream. We were when Juan Soto signed, we did that stream that everybody who in the chat, on my chat, Chris's chat, said LGM. We put you in a little wheel, and we whoever it was, it's going to be a Juan Soto shirt, whatever color you want, blue, black, pink, purple, or whatever they have. Let's put it that way. And we did it, and we're going to do it right now. So right now we're going to do the giveaway. So make sure you're paying attention, guys, and watching. If you're not watching live, make sure, and we'll tag you in this and everything like that for whoever wins. So you have an idea. We're going to give you enough time to, get in contact with me or Chris in that process, so you can get in touch with us so we get your information. So here we go, guys. With no further ado, here is the giveaway, and we'll be ready to go right now. Watch it, guys. Here we go. There it is, guys. Eli Love, or Ellie Love 954. You are the winner of the Mets shirt. Any color you want. You're going to have enough time to do it. So Ellie Love, Eli Love, or whatever it is, 954. If you're not watching live, make sure you find a way to find us on my channel or Chris's channel. We will tag you on both of our channels, so you can get in touch with us, and you are the winner of the Juan Soto shirt. So congratulations. One of probably many of either the Mets Hot Stove pregame or postgame shows that me and Chris do, giveaways throughout the offseason, throughout the year. We'll probably do more, of course, and our individual channels as well. So congratulations to Eli Love. Chris, any final thoughts before we head out?
No, congrats. I mean, it was a long time coming. We wanted to make sure that we followed through with the giveaway for you all. So that's going to be, as soon as, whoever won claims their prize, get that over to you. much well deserved, and this fan base deserves having Juan Soto in this organization now, which is the reason why we did this. But again, we appreciate the support. Final thoughts for me is that a lot of offseason left, guys. I know it's just about 5 weeks until spring training, but it seems like there's still so much hot stove action to talk about, and we will be talking about it over the next couple of weeks going into spring training. I can't wait until spring training finally commences. Probably will be doing some post-game streams for some of the spring training games, whether it's with both of us or my channel or however we do it. I'll be doing that. I know I did it last year. I'll do it again this year. But also for my channel, again, daily videos, almost daily videos. I try to put out videos as much as I can, talking about relevant topics that are engaging you all. About 17 subscribers away from 2,000 on the channel. It's been a milestone that I've been wanting to hit for quite some time. I appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed yet, come on over to the channel, subscribe, get me to 2K. I appreciate the support. And as always, great stream. Let's go Mets.
There you go, guys. So once again, congratulations to Eli Love 954 for the Juan Soto shirt. And make sure, guys, you hit that like button. If you're on X, we got a ton of people on X watching today. Head over to the channel, subscribe to the channel, guys. Mets Hot Stove is going to continue throughout the offseason, and probably if there's some free agents still out there, through the spring training as well. So we might have close to probably 40 Mets Hot Stoves by the time we're all said and done before the season starts. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to Mets Hot Stove episode 26. Congratulations once again to Eli Love 954, and we'll see you next time on the Mets Hot Stove show. Have a great night, guys, and let's go Mets. Good night, guys.
Go Mets.
Dead of night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, dreams bust to grow. Mets in the air, chase glory, no fear. Broken backs, but hearts steer clear. OMG, the chaos, what a scene. Streets